All right. Welcome to another episode of Connect and Politic. We're here with a special guest. Please introduce yourself by telling us your name, where you're currently located, and your favorite snack.
My name is Pax Robinson. Born in Oakland, California. Actually born in Los Angeles, California. Raised in the Bay Area. Currently living in East London, UK. My favorite snack. Ooh. At the moment, this is going to sound so Californian, but my favorite go-to snack is probably like a smoothie. Does that count as a snack?
Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of smoothie?
Mango, strawberry, pineapple, with a little water, and grapefruit.
Interesting. And is this homemade or is this?
Yeah, one of my COVID buys, like just to celebrate, just like treat myself as like I'm in my home. I need a new thing to do besides like working. Was I bought a blender, and that was like a big boy buy. I feel like a blender is one of those big appliances that like adults hella have to just like go to. And I was like, I'm 31, I need a blender. And after that, I've been blending everything. Fruit, trying to just think healthy, and obviously spending so much time in your home, it's easy to just kind of eat crap. And I thought if I'm going to be sitting down doing, going from nothing to something, I might as well be putting everything but fruit and vegetables in my system so I can hopefully come out of this pandemic with a little bit more healthy, considering health is in crisis at the moment.
Yeah. Well, do you remember your favorite food as a child?
Probably peanut butter and jelly, not because it was my favorite, but because I thought that's what my favorite was supposed to be. I think, like many kids who feel on the fringe of their own youth or the youth culture at the time, I attracted myself to things that I thought were supposed to be. So like PB&J is just like the go-to kid snack. Like, oh, it's Saturday, let's have a PB&J. So I just thought the PB&J was supposed to be what you ate. But honestly, I think if we're being brutally honest, I used to wake up in the night and eat Eggos with salt and pepper and a slice of ham. And that used to crank. And I will still, they don't make Eggos here, but like there's something like it. But I think if I had if I was on death row and they were like, it's your last meal, I'd be like, give me a box of Eggos and some salt and pepper and a slice of ham, and we are good to go.
Where did you even come up with that mix?
I don't know. I think it was one of those just like, it's late, I'm creeping, I can't make a lot of noise. What can I grab that's not going to cause a lot of attention? And the Eggos were like, at our house, it was like right there in the freezer. And then the ham would sit on top of stuff where I didn't have to pull out any drawers. So it was really just about height. Like the Eggos and the ham were like at my little level, and it was really just like a boom, boom, here we go. And then the salt and pepper was just on the table. So it was like, what could I pull? Again, height. So it's like, let me grab this because it's on the table and I can. Eggos is eye level. Ham is eye level. We got a match.
Yeah. Wow. What's your favorite meal now as an adult?
Tacos. And my mom's vegan mac and cheese. It didn't always used to be vegan mac and cheese, but through I think about 2013, I discovered that I was lactose intolerant, which may be an overshare, I don't know. But her macaroni and cheese is like my favorite thing. I would probably add that next to the Eggos and the ham and cheese, like the ham and salt and pepper, and I couldn't eat it because it would kill me. And she created this beautiful, wonderful recipe for vegan mac and cheese. And now every Thanksgiving, the vegan mac and cheese smacks so hard, everybody be trying to creep on my shit. Like, no, y'all got the real cheese. Y'all can stick and y'all can go ahead and have your little, you feel me, your Parmesan sprinkles and your little buttercreams. I need this to survive. I'm gonna need you to get your own. But now she just makes 2 trays of the vegan mac and cheese because everybody wants it now.
What is she, what's in it? I mean, what is she?
So her specialty, and I don't know if this is giving away too much, but she does this thing where she mixes the hot macaroni in cream of mushroom. And so as opposed to just, and a lot of Black moms have their own recipes to mac and cheese. Everyone's got a different system. But I think her system was she would boil the macaroni, and before adding any of the cheese layers, she would put it in a big pot and then rotate it in cream of mushroom. Pour it into a Pyrex dish, do a layer of cheese, and then another layer of macaroni, and then another layer of cheese, and then whatever was left in the cream of mushroom would, soak its way down to the bottom, and then she would top it with whatever, fancy schmancy, like $5 block of aged Gouda Brie nonsense that made it amazing. But it was never just no like regular ass like yellow cheese. It was always some like amazing, like aged to perfection, like beauty. And the macaroni's changed too. She would use the half shells. She could do penne. She'll do, it's always changing. I feel like every time I go back for Thanksgiving, she always tries to reinvent the mac and cheese and make it something like new and exciting. And honestly, that's why everyone ends up coming to our house, because they know that the mac and cheese is about to smack and it's going to be new every time. So it's like, I wonder what kind of mac and cheese we have this year. It's really good. It's amazing.
Nice. So when was the last time you had it? Thanksgiving?
Oh, unfortunately, I've been on the move for so long. I haven't had my mom's mac and cheese at the Thanksgiving dinner table since about 2000. The last time I was home was 2018 for Christmas. I think the last time I was home for Thanksgiving was probably 2016, I would say. Yeah, 2016. It's been a while. She made it. She did make some and then froze it and sent it to me in New York. Actually, when I was living in Harlem for Thanksgiving, and I was just like, we're gonna have to figure something out because it's been hella years and I need to have this in my life. And so she legit made an entire Pyrex dish, froze it with some, ice, dry ice to keep it like actually frozen, and shipped that to 125th and 7th. And that's what I brought to the day. I was like, let me thaw this out one time. Let me go ahead and preheat this real quick. And it was absolutely, I don't even know if that's actually healthy, but it worked and I'm still here. So L'chaim, like we out here.
Yeah. That's dope. What's your fondest memory from childhood?
So my siblings are a lot older than me. I'm the baby of my nuclear base. And so it's me, and then my brother is 8 years older. The middle sister is 10 years. The oldest sister is 13 years older than me. And then my brother would be 18 years older than me, but he passed away when I was 17. So I was kind of alone for a lot, aside from, school friends, like neighborhood friends. House-wise, I was alone a lot of the time. And if my mom had to go do stuff, I just had to go with her. My dad had his own company and was, in the member of the clergy. So he was very active in the community and did a lot of stuff. And so she'd always have meetings on school boards and rehearsals and stuff. And she was a drama teacher. And I think running around and being a fly on the wall within theater spaces and costume shops and, scene shops was probably the greatest, best, and the longest memory of childhood, because that's kind of where I grew up, was in the theater, and not on purpose. It just was, babysitters were hard. It was hard to come by. And also I was a creative kid. So in her mind, she was like, I'd rather let him explore, backstage or sit in the audience and watch actors come alive versus sitting him in a room with a couple of books, because this was pre-internet. So it was like, you either playing outside till the lights come on, or you need to read a book, or you got to watch like Sister or Boy Meets World. And it was like, so she was like, no, you're coming to the theater and you're going to learn. You're going to sit here and you're going to, so I mean, by the time I was 15, I had probably had a catalog of just so many amazing plays and musicals in my Rolodex, to the point that I would actually go to school and quote certain plays as like verbatim in ways that I probably shouldn't have. Like there's a line from the 1952 film, The Bad Seed. I'm probably misaged that. It may be 52 or 54, where one of the creepy superintendent is like sweeping, and he says something like, "I'll show that bitch plenty." And I remember saying that to my teacher because she made me angry. And I was like, "I'll show that bitch plenty." And it was like, obviously I'm a kid. I didn't know, but I saw it on stage and I was like, that's what he said when he was mad at her, and she just made me mad. So that's what I'm supposed to say. Yeah, that didn't go over so well. But that was usually what happened. I would just literally take everything that I saw on stage and reverberate it into my own life as just fact, because that was my, aside from school, the stage was my education. That's how I learned how to love. It's how I learned how to build relationships. It's how I related to the human connection and how I felt represented in the world, because I could see myself on stage where I didn't see it in reality. If that made any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask you this question, but it sounds like I already know the answer. Do you miss anything about being a child?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who says that they don't is obviously too full of himself. I think that the innocence and the candor and the freedom, when you are protected by those around you, because not all children are allowed any of the things that I just described. I was blessed and privileged enough to grow up in an environment where I had that protection. I had, both parents in the household. I had, even though it was not my biological father, it was still a father. With maintaining a relationship with my biological father, I had siblings, I had school friends, and even in that own turmoil of coming into my, sexuality, or my idea of religion, or my idea of creativity, I think that being able to just exist without having to do anything, if that makes sense, is kind of amazing. Now, obviously, as you get older, there's more things are asked of you, and now by the time you get to your 30s, you can't. There's no way to be invisible. You kind of have to, in one way or another, you have to answer that email. You have to answer that telephone call. The bank is you have to go to the bank. You have to go to the post office. You have to do so many things just to stay solvent and can maintain breath with, just calm, that, there's no way to really be invisible. But as a kid, you can hella be invisible. Like you can literally just like stand in a room and no one will talk, not even on some disrespect. It's just like eye level. Like they literally can, they don't really see you.
Yeah.
I think I miss that. I miss being able to observe and not to being able to be in it and not of it. And being so innocent and so naive that I think the only time that what's that phrase? Innocence is bliss, or ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance, yeah.
Children, that is the only time that we're allowed the space and the freedom to be ignorant and blissful without any consequences. Now, clearly, that's a happy idea of it, but I think between birth to 9, you kind of you're expected to just not know shit. Like because you're learning, but you're learning at a rate that disallows you to learn too much. Because when kids learn too much, you're too mature. It's like, oh no, you're too grown. Oh, that's too much. Like, oh, go ahead and find you some. My mother always used to say, go ahead and find you a dollar and buy you some business. Like, this is not a conversation for you right now. Like, too much, which made it ironic to think that I was the one sitting in the back of the theater in that darkness, absorbing all of this, for lack of a better term, adult content at such an early age, and expelling it at a time when most kids were, like I said, watching Sister Sister or Boy Meets World, or playing outside, scuffing their knees. And I was, observing examples of the human connection and trauma and turmoil through creativity and theatrics. But I was able to do it and not be noticed for it. And I think that was I miss that. I miss being able to walk around and no one pay attention. That sounds a little sad, but I don't know. In a way, yeah. I think now it would be nice to just kind of, disappear for a day and not have to deal with bills, or, any of the things that are blessings. It is a blessing to have bills. Some people don't have homes to have bills.
Yeah.
So I think it's just how you look at it. But yeah, if I could answer that in a simple phrase, which I never do, it would just be, to be a kid is to almost be invincible and invisible. You're extremely resilient. You have all the hope in the world. You think that nothing is ever going to change, that nothing could ever happen to you. And then you get older and you realize that that's a farce and a fallacy. And then, as you get older, life starts to pick and pull at you and try to push you into something, you know, often before your time. And, you know, by the time you get through puberty, the world says you should have already decided who you're going to be, how you're going to be, and when you're going to do it. And I just think that's completely ridiculous. I think that we need to allow for the human expansion, human growth, to just be a little bit more open to the possibilities of just possibility, which kids are given. And I don't think anybody else like that is, I don't think anybody else, any other age group is given that much freedom.
Yeah. You said you grew up with your mom, your biological dad was around, and then in the house, your stepdad.
Yeah.
So from those three, adult figures, what are some of the most important lessons that you think you learned?
So my biological father was an immigrant. He came to this country from Panama. And I think his hard work and ethic towards building something larger than himself or his family is something that he never had to say verbally, but was shown. My stepfather, growing up in, Red Line, Chicago, born in 1952, had to walk off the curb if a white man was coming, keep your head down, yes sir, no sir, gets called boy up until the age of, 13, 15 before he moves to Los Angeles. What I learned from him was blackness, was that raw, like ferocious and sensitive and understanding idea of blackness. I think my father participated in a lot of, protests, and he was part of the birth of, he went to Long Beach in Los Angeles, and he cultivated and started the first Black Student Union in 1971. He was an affiliate of the Black Panthers. He was a part of the Black nationalist movement. And again, never had to say these things out loud, but he showed them through his action. He showed it through the boards that he sat on, through the groups he was a part of, through the conversations he had, the jazz he listened to, the gin that he drank with his partners, the way that they talked, the way that they laughed. I think I learned from him how to be a sensitive, caring, understanding, affluent, radical, Black man, which, again, in the 90s, we didn't have a lot of examples on how to be multifaceted. So I think, again, to answer it in a simple term, what I learned from him was how to be a multifaceted Black man. From my mother, I learned how to create and how to imagine and how to take an intangible idea and turn it into something, again, in a multifaceted way. My mother was a model and an actress growing up. My grandmother, was one of the first Black women to own a record store in Los Angeles. When Berry Gordy moved Motown to Los Angeles, they were kind of in business together, because you got a Black record label, it's a Black record store in Los Angeles, we got to be friends.
Right.
The neighborhood that my mother grew up in was very prominent for its Black celebrity, not celebrities, so to speak, but Marvin Gaye was across the street. Diana Ross had a house down the street. Clive Davis was an often guest at my grandmother's house because of the area, and it kind of being this Black Hollywood-esque area. So he made money off of everybody. So it was I think she grew up in that. She grew up in that idea that Blacks can be more than just jigaboos and pickaninnies. And, she was one of the first original dancers on Soul Train. She was one of the first women to do, when Johnson & Johnson moved over to Black hair care, and she had, her Afro Sheen commercial. She was a majorette at TSU. She, crossed the AKA. So I think she's always used her Blackness as a shield, and not only in a performative way, but also in a very educational way, taking all that life experience and then taking it to the classroom. After she left Texas, when she had my sister, she, started teaching at Crenshaw High School in the 80s, which was rough. One of her most prominent students was John Singleton. She mentored John and cultivated his voice and helped him, bring about a Black narrative that allowed him to write. I'm not saying that it was her. I'm just saying, as a teacher, as a Black teacher, she was in charge of changing Black minds. And I think it is not a coincidence that one of those Black minds happened to be one of the greatest filmmakers of his time, telling Black stories, and again, showing the multifaceted Black characters. I mean, a lot of people like to pigeonhole Poetic Justice or Boys in the Hood oh, that's just another, another gang film. And it's like, have you actually watched it though? Like, or did you just see the 2-minute trailer that somebody pushed out to try and get everybody Black to go watch it? Because if you actually watch it, then you actually you can see the depths and the layers of this narrative, and how, whether it's, Lawrence Fishburne's character or Janet's character or Tupac's or Regina King's or, Angela Bassett's character, they are continually and multifaceted characters. They're never one-sided, which was not what we were seeing displayed on media, television, and music. So I think all three of those things, having, immigrant blood, Black pride, imagination and creativity, and Black celebration, created a space for me to feel seen in a way that was not actually seen for a lot of people. Almost in a way that was somewhat damaging, because when I got older, I thought that everybody grew up that way. I thought everybody understood that we were beautiful human beings who could do anything that we wanted to do. It's a weird like pivot that you have to do when you get older, and you realize that even though your parents are telling you you can do anything, you can achieve all things through God who strengthens you, you also have to like limit that so that you put yourself in danger. You don't put yourself in risk. But my parents never really talked about the danger part of it. They only talked about the pride. They only talked about the imagination. They only talked about the joy of Blackness and multiracialness. I mean, my family is very multi-ethnic, but Black. And I think that was another thing that I just thought was normal, like to just have white aunties, Asian grandmothers, Spanish-speaking fathers. Like, I thought that was just the world. And it wasn't really until I moved to New York, or I went to school in France as well, but even in France, I mean, everything is, where I was specifically, everything was mixed and everything was multicultural. But honestly, when I moved to New York in 2012, was the first time that I was ever confronted with sheer upfront racism, which again, growing up in Oakland, California, that's a blessing, because in Oakland, we got a lot going on, but to be quite honest, in Oakland, if you white, you the minority. So again, I grew up with the conscious idea that like, oh, everybody got white friends. Everybody got Asian friends. Everybody got Tongan friends. I got Samoans, Polynesians, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, yellow, brown, purple. Like, I just thought that was I thought that was normal, because as America's product, we push that, but we don't actually endorse it. And there's a difference. So I was seeing what I thought was normal, somewhat represented in television and film but also one-sided. And then again, moving to, a major city like New York, being called, the N-word for the second time out loud in public, you're just like, what? That's real? People really do that? It was a major, major culture shock of just like, oh, I lived in a bubble. Got it. And then I kind of had to re-educate myself, which is a little, it's a little disheartening, because I think I lost a little bit of that joy and a little bit of that fearlessness. But again, it got me to where I am today as a queer Black man, creative, living in London, doing the same shit, honestly, that I was doing at 12, making stuff, painting, creating, like just, cultivating my own imagination, taking intangible ideas and making them tangible, whether it be on a canvas, on a stage, on a film shoot, in a photo shoot, or on, on a piece of paper, or on a scribble on a notebook. It's like I've still done the same things, but life, the context around it has just informed each of them in a different way.
What was the experience of racism in New York the most surprising thing you experienced when you transitioned from your family's home?
So it was two things. It was one, the interracial discrimination that I felt within the Black community, whether it had been from my, economic status as a child, or the certain privileges that I was given that many were not, being naive to that, the color or the shade of my brownness, which I think were highlighted more in New York than they ever were in California. The first time that anyone had ever referred to me as like, a light-skinned nigga was in and I was just like, for real? I thought I was more like a smoky mocha, but okay. You know, it was a little alarming. You know, New York was the first time that especially with modeling, I realized that like the token, you know, the Oreo, the whitewashed, because I listened to Coldplay, you think I'm just like, I turned in my black card? Like, no ho, I can quote all the Tupac's lyrics. I can give you that Too Short, and best believe E40 is uncle. So don't try and play me one time. But that's also like, that's such a bamboozled idea of blackness, is that in order to be black, you have to have XYZ. No, in order to be black, it's here. That's it. It's right here, and it's right here. You know, and I think again, growing up in a bubble like Oakland, where everything feels culturally relevant, and birth of the Black Panthers, birth of the free speech movement at Berkeley, like birth of this, we do that. It's a very, I think I thought that was just everyone's consciousness, and it really wasn't. And so the twofold the discrimination I faced in New York was from my own community, which ironically was the reason why I started growing dreads, was to feel more like a member of my community. Now the irony is my hair wasn't quite as as it needed to be, so it took a while for a nigga to grow, but it's okay. They here now, yay. So even then, you know, and then it was like, oh yeah, you got them Lisa Bonets, and I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? I don't. It's like, what else is there, you know?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it was just being, you know, a tall, slender Black man in corporate world, or just in that corporate sphere, whether it was in modeling or when I worked at Marc Jacobs or when I worked for, and you know, this company. It was just learning that, oh, I can't raise my voice at this table because you're going to see me as angry. Oh, I can't do this because I'm only 25 and you think anything below that is nothing. Oh, I can't do this because you think I'm that. Or, you know, it was all of that combined. So I think when I moved to New York in 2012, after finishing grad school in France, with a little stopover in Los Angeles, and it was coming at me from both sides. And I think, again, because of my level of Blackness and my level of queerness, most people who look and love like I do, we always feel like we're on the fringe. So now I done moved halfway across the country for my family, trying to find that sense of community, and I'm getting confronted and or pushed aside from both sides. Now, obviously, that's at face value, and it took time for people to really understand who I was and love me for it. But in 2012, there was no narrative for the out-of-the-box, weird, quirky, fashionable, androgynous, sexually fluid Black dude. That's a very new 2018 to 2020 deal. You feel me? Younger generations have the Jaden Smiths, and you know, I forgot the actor's name that plays. He was on, his first name is Justice. He was on The Get Down. He just starred in the new Pikachu film. But we didn't have those. It was, you were either Ahmad from Soul Food, or like, you know, as a kid, you know, it's like there weren't that many indicators of Black fluidity. And I'm not gonna lie, part of me is slightly resentful of the younger generations. After I finished grad school, my little stopover in Los Angeles, I would go back to Oakland often and direct musicals at the high school that I went to. My mother was still the director of the Performing Arts Academy there, and I would go back and I would do a musical every year, just as a way to give back. At the time, it kind of paid more than what I was doing in New York. And I grew up in the theater, and it just felt like the best thing that I could do with a undergraduate degree in theater. It was like, well, I should go do something with that. So I would take little breaks from New York. I'd fly back to California and teach musicals. And even then, between 2012, I directed from 2012 to about 2000, maybe 14, 15. Even those kids who are now, you know, pushing 25, 26, I mean, they were just on a whole new world. It was like, the idea of coming out was like so passé. The idea of interracial dating was just like the norm. And I'm like, you motherfuckers. Like, you mean I got shoved in trash cans and pushed in lockers for wearing high-waist Levi's and a white tucked-in t-shirt, and you hoes is running around here in bell-bottoms and flares and sparkles in your hair, and it's cool? Man, fuck you. Like, I mean, I don't. I love them for it. They're amazing. But, you know, there's that little part of you that's just like, you don't get Jon Snow. Like, you just, it's a little, you get a little salty. But I also, as a person who has that educator blood in me, you're also inspired by it. And I have a lot of students that I still talk to this day that watching them live their full truth without any curtains, without any blinds or closed or locked doors is absolutely magical. Yeah. And for someone born, you know, in the late 80s, growing up in the 90s, you know, puberty at the turn of the century, we didn't have that. It was broadcasted that we did, but that wasn't real. I mean, I think, you know, obviously with the recent revolution, we realized that whole racism is over thing was a lie, but I was the product of it being over. We were supposed to be the generation that showed the world that it was okay. Hands across America, you know, Million Man March, like and those are amazing things, but they did not carry as much weight outside of the Black community as they should have. I remember standing on my doorstep and watching my father walk home from the bus stop from the Million Man March. I still have that button, you know, but when you say that to other people who aren't Negro, they're like, the what? The who? Everybody remembers the March on Washington, I Have a Dream speech. Everybody remembers, you know, the gay liberation movement in New York. But these things that made our lives change, that, you know, within our own homes, were not mainstream news. Yeah. Now they are. And I think that's another reason why we're seeing such a push from those that were silenced for so long, because, you know, we made racism uncool, which is great. We should continue to do that. But now they're emboldened because of the man in the White House. That whole racism isn't cool is no longer being, like, now it's just kind of everywhere again, and we've gone back in time. Yeah. We've completely regressed, and it makes that moment of my dad, it makes that memory of my dad walking home, you know, from the bus stop from the Million Man March seem like a dream. Like, did that actually happen? Because that was in 96. So 96, 7, 8, no, it's like, shouldn't we have done something? Yeah. But you know.
Yeah. A little change in direction. What are your favorite things to do for self-care?
Gardening, sketching, and movement. Sometimes all within the same hour. I recently started gardening at our place here in London. We were lucky enough to find a place with a backyard and like a deck area. And so I've started cultivating, you know, organic seeds and planting tomatoes and bell peppers and lettuce and sunflowers and basil and thyme, and spending that hour. I literally, you know, before that call, I was outside in the garden, and spending those morning moments or those afternoon moments in between shoots or in between production meetings or in between, you know, prop sources. It's almost like having a direct conversation with the higher power. Feeling the dirt in your hands, watching something go from a tiny black speck to a giant green being is magical. I mean, and if you spend, the more time you spend, the more you learn, and you start to realize, like, okay, what kind of dirt? Like, how big does it need to be? Like, are the leaves, or, you know, what is this? Like, what bugs are good for it? What bugs aren't? And it really starts to put everything in full circle. And then you also just realize how small you are as a human, that, like, you literally, you're a bunch of cells, you know, like, that have dominated the earth, yes, but at the end and the beginning of the day, you are just as magical and just as poignant to the dirt as these plants. And I think we often forget that we are of this earth. Like, the moon affects our emotions. The waters, like, purge our spirit. You know, it's bless you. And And I think that we get humans are very arrogant, and I think we forget how small we actually are. And I think gardening for me is a reminder, and that's why I like to do it at the start of my day, so that I'm reminded with every day that yes, my life matters, but so does we all. Like everything is like, I don't want to sound like a hippie, but like I don't, I don't like to squash bugs anymore, because I'm like, bro, you living your life. Like, go ahead. Who am I to just squash like because you got way more.
Is this were you always there, or is this a new thing?
This is a new thing. It's a new thing.
Okay.
Definitely, if you see some shit, stomp some shit real quick, But now I'm like, no, I'm gonna let you live because I held on to. Like, why am I there taking? And also, you possibly could help. Spiders. There's a purpose for them. I don't fuck with them like that, but it's cool. Live your life, and I'm gonna live mine. I usually don't trust things that have more legs and eyes than I do. So there's often quite a few things that I'm just like, I don't know about that. But it's I think now spending more time
why don't you trust things with more legs?
Because they got too many things going on that I don't understand. You feel me? Like, okay, you can fly. I can't fly. So that means your attack mode is far superior than what I can accomplish. You feel me? I got these 2 knees and these 2 kneecaps and these 2 hips. I'm over here just breaking, and your ass is like, whew. Chris, I can't trust you. I can't trust you. I'ma love you, but I can't trust you. I love animals. The deer that I grew up with are awesome. The raccoons that used to eat our trash are brilliant. Miko was one of my favorite characters in Pocahontas. I don't care. You can stay your little Miko ass away from me, and I'm gonna do mine. I'm not gonna squash you, but we can live. You feel me? I don't want to say it out loud, but separate but equal. Maybe. It is, just like a little bit. Just a little bit. But yeah, I think gardening has it's just changed my whole relationship with like the world, honestly.
Yeah. Do you is that also a tool or a practice that you do use to reduce distractions?
Yes.
Is gardening? Yeah.
100%. Usually with music. So like today, I was listening to, Black is King on repeat, trying to remind myself of my own majesty. Hello. And with my hands in the dirt. So it's like, vibrations and movement. And when I say movement, I don't mean just like dancing, even though I was, a dancer, or I am, I guess, or was professionally trained as a dancer in school. Movement is much like our Blackness, multifaceted. So whether that's stretching or sketching, that's movement. My hand, the rhythmic pattern from what I think to how that translates on my fingertips is movement. Digging your fingers like in the dirt and trying to figure out if the roots are overdone or if they're too wet or if it's too moist. That's movement to me. That's feeling the vibrations from around you and pushing it out through your body and allowing that conversation to exist, allowing it to continue so that just like most languages, it becomes a language. New York is a very interesting place because of its movement. I think that, when I talked about being invisible and kind of missing that, I think New York is one of the only places you can live and be surrounded by 8 million people and still be invisible. But your movement is what makes it unique. The way that you move through the people, the way that you hop on the train and hop off, the way you hail your cab, the way you run down the street, the way you converse with the city is movement. And I don't think I think as a dancer, we have a better vocabulary to explain that, because we're, kinesthetically, we're actually like moving and we're remembering the joints and the muscles and the tissues and all these things. But I think, on a pedestrian level, if you watch any crosswalk in New York, that's choreography. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And being able to translate that obviously to the stage or to something else is even more beautiful. But I think just the natural elements of like the humanoid responses to movement are very fascinating. And it's a language that most people forget or do not cultivate for themselves. So I know what my movements are, like I explained, whether it's sketching and memorizing or understanding how my my brain can move my fingers to create something from white to black, or the way that I pot a bouret out of, not falling when someone tries to bump into me, or the way that you hop over a pond with your foot pointed and your arm stretched, or the way that you pull out a chair with your wrist slanted, and it's beautiful. I think just movement is very important, and also vibration. So like music, live music obviously especially, but even listening to something in your ears, feeling those vibrations and those hums and those whispers and the melodies alerts the senses to move. Literally, your cells move faster and move when listening to music. The vibrations from music actually have a rhythmic just power in that. And I know that, if you consciously understand that, then I think it can help. And then also unconsciously, that's how you have, music that can either put you to sleep or wake you up, can make you feel energized or can make you feel tired, can make you feel joy or make you feel sadness. It's more than just the lyrics or the melody or who's singing it. It's the vibrations in which are being given to you and distilled and filtered within your body that are most important.
Yeah. You've alluded to this, but we haven't really gotten into it. So what do you do professionally? And then is what you're doing professionally any different than what you dream about doing as a kid?
So professionally, I am a production and costume designer. I have filled many roles, or many titles, I should say, throughout my career. It took a long time for me to understand what official title I wanted to have because of all the things that I have done. And because everyone tries to, and I said this before, they all, after, puberty, everyone tries to limit you and put you in a box and say, okay, you got to choose one: math, science, history, or art, because you can't do everything. You're told that from the time you learn how to write an essay to the time you take your SATs. You can't do it all. No one can just do it all. I'm sorry, but you can. And it took a while for me to say that with confidence. And it also took a while as a Black creative to realize what that actually looked like. So I think now I'm in a place where professionally, yeah, what I do now and get paid for, still not what I'm worth, but I'm working on it, is the same thing that I did as a child. I used to take scraps from thrift stores and from my sister's clothes and sketch them together and cut them up and make new things. I used to dress bedrooms. I would wake up in the middle of the night and reconfigure the living room to match a season. I'd go outside and get autumn leaves and sprinkle them on the bookshelf with acorns and put the picture certain this way and angle it this way so the light reflected and hit it down. That's production and costume design, but I wasn't given the vocabulary at that age to realize that. So unfortunately, I didn't go to a film school. I didn't go to a fashion school. I didn't go to a university that would have streamlined that. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I could do it and I was good at it. So I studied dance because I was given a scholarship to dance, and I studied French as well. And then I studied French in grad school in the south of France and political science and media. And then I took all those things, moved to New York, and figured out, if these are my pieces, how can I make my own puzzle? How can I make all these things make sense? And I am blessed to say that there is even an avenue for me to be able to do that. But for example, I just finished a film 2 nights ago. Still probably should be asleep, and someone asked me the same thing. They're like, oh, which do you prefer, production or costume design? And my answer was, which do you prefer, food or water? Because if you had to choose one, I'm sure you couldn't. Yeah. You could probably live longer from one than the other. But for me, they're hand in hand. And to kind of give a little bit of explanation of what a production and costume designer actually do, a production designer is someone that comes into an empty space and builds the world, connects the fibers of the character to the space in which they're surrounded by. So if I give you 4 walls and a door, and you tell me my character is a 16-year-old Black boy who grew up in XYZ and does this, this, and this, it's my job to find out what clothes are in his closet, what books are on his bookshelf, what's hidden under his bed. Is there anything hidden under his bed? And if so, what is it? What pillowcases look like? What shoes, how does he tie his shoes and where, and what shoes are they? It's the fabrics of everything that are placed together so that you don't have to question his world at all. If I do my job well, you're never questioning this character because this character was brought to you in a very honest, authentic, and human way. Now, a costume designer, depending on the budget or the role, will either pull, source, and bring about clothes either from thrift stores or costume shops and bring together something, or you start from scratch. You sit there and you say, I want 1785 female, affluent, living in Montana, random. I should be able to take all of those things and draw and sketch how she ties her shirt, what color the shirt is, what's it made of, where did she get it, is that material even existent in this time? What materials were they? How did they tie their shoes? What kind of shoes were they? Was it leather soled or rubber soled? Was it, were the books bound by leather? Was it the book she's holding? Was it, were women even allowed to read? Can she have a book? It's almost like you literally have to learn everything to just do one thing, which again, considering all the things that I've said before, I kind of was set up to do nothing but that. Like, I think when you asked me earlier, like, what did I learn from my parents? I learned how to build worlds. I learned how to take, again, intangible ideas and make them tangible, whether that was from an immigrant narrative, whether that was from, a red line Jim Crow-esque South narrative, or whether it was from, a Soul Train swinging dancing girl with long legs and pretty honey brown eyes. Like, I learned how to take all of these facets of human life and put them on the screen. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy telling more stories than just from the characters that look like me. The film that I just finished was a very sensitive and complicated story about a young couple struggling with the aftermath of a miscarriage within the Hasidic Jewish community. And I'm, again, Black as fuck, and I still was able to do it, So I had to create a Hasidic Jewish home. So we're talking Shabbat dinner. We're talking the books on the shelf, the paintings on the wall. We're talking the wigs that have to be placed on the foam heads. We're talking the 2 beds that are separate because women and men can't sleep together unless she's cleaned. We're talking now we're pushing the beds together because it's Friday and you can only have sex on Fridays after she's been to the mikveh. We're talking, the coiled hair. We mean the rubber-soled shoes, the black suit with the print. Like, it's almost like mini history lessons on humanity. And it's like, I think it's such a privilege to be able to like dive into these little corners of humanity and build them from the ground up and then sit back and watch another human emote from that, whether it be the actor or the audience. I never want to do anything for the rest of my life because it includes everything. I'm able to use my understanding of movement for building costumes and clothes. I've used my fashion sense to figure out what is in the closet and what she's wearing. I used my talent as a painter to paint and construct, whether it be a bookshelf or the painting on the wall or the garment. It's all there, and it's all, kind of, they all inform each other. And that's why I've always resented the idea that you had to choose one thing, because none of us are just one thing. Like, not even on paper. You have age, sex, location, gender, sexual identity, like your fate. Like, we're never just one thing. If we were, we like would be earthworms, and not even they're one thing. It's like, so the idea that you have to like choose one as opposed to letting these things choose you is just ridiculous to me. And so I joyfully walk into every project knowing that I get the privilege of explaining, exploring, and illustrating the human condition so that hopefully someone else can walk out of that theater and feel more like themselves. Basically.
Yeah. It sounds like the perfect role for you, this constant learning. Is there, not just from this role, but just throughout life, is there anything you want to unlearn?
Yeah, I think I want to. It's dangerous though, because we don't live there yet. one of the things that I learned from my partner, I love the way that his brain works. He's so fair, and so he sees things in a way that they almost should be, but we just haven't got there yet. And I want to unlearn looking for racism. I want to unlearn looking for injustice. So I was on set the other day, and I'm the only, as a production designer, you are head of department, so head of art department, basically. So you work with everyone else that is in art, cultivating what you perceive to be the idea or the design. I'm young, I'm Black, I'm queer, where there's not a lot of us as head of department. So I already knew walking into this project that it was going to be hard, but also I've done it before, let's go. You feel me? There were a couple of times when conversations were had outside of my immediate, like, you know, we're literally standing, the five of us, myself, someone else, you know, the DOP, the gaffer who does the lighting, and the director, and these conversations that are directly influenced by my job are being had elsewhere. So you're talking about something that is production design centric, but you're having this you're literally standing in front of me, and then you walk away to have the conversation, and then you come back as if I'm just supposed to know what's going on. So now my first instinct is what? Now I'm thinking it's because of this that the conversation is, why, how am I not supposed to? How am I not supposed to go, oh, I'm too young, I'm too Black, and I'm too gay? How am I not supposed to think that? Because the world has taught me that. I want to unlearn that rhetoric and that idea that my demerit has anything to do with the color of my skin or the way and who I love. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. Because the reality is, 9 times out of 10, that's probably the case. So now I'm the youngest, you know, I'm dealing with people 62, 58, 49, and 30, you know, 37. And my little 31 ass is like, I just want to make art, you know? So it's how am I not supposed to second guess myself? You haven't given me any explanation or any evidence that says, oh no, it's just because the sun was in my eye, so we just moved over to the side. Or no, it was just because this wasn't a conversation. No, I know that it was a conversation I was supposed to be involved in, because now that you've walked back, you've continued to give orders that I am supposed to be influenced by, and yet I have no idea of what's happening. But yet you hired me for the job. So how am I not supposed to think that it's anything that I already feel insecure about leading that insecurity? Like, but we don't live there yet. So I would like, so to answer the question again is simply, I want to unlearn. I really want to unlearn looking for prejudice, because it's, I don't like it, but it's just not safe for me right now to not be able to see it. Because the risks are too great. The risk is death. You know, the risk is no more. It's, I mean, that's it. The risk is actually death. I could place myself in a scene or in a scenario or in an area that I'm just la-ti-da-ti-da, racism doesn't exist, we're fine, and literally not be able to go home because I'm lying on the curb with somebody's knee in my neck or a bullet in my back. Now, obviously, that's a harsh example, but it's also a real ass example. So when I say, you know, I wish that I could think that way, and I'm constantly inspired by the way that my partner is able to deconstruct prejudice and racism, and just see humans for based on merit and based on character and based on kindness and forgiveness and empathy. But I also have to realize that my partner is a blue-eyed, blonde-haired white guy. So he's able to not see it. And that's okay. That is actually okay. I don't have that freedom, at least right now. But I want to, and I think that we will. I would love to be alive to see it. I would love to be 58 and having a meeting with any of the other white heads of department and not second guess my decision, or not have to think that they made it, you know, I would love that. Unfortunately, we're not there yet.
What's the best advice you've received about money?
Pay your bills on time, and don't cash a check before you have it.
Those are
Probably like in reverse order, but like, either way, it's still, so it's like, don't, I guess it'd be don't count your chickens before they hatch.
yeah.
Yeah, don't count your dollars before they in your hand.
Yeah.
So like, even especially in the arts where you're often like, you're given a quote, you're given a rate, oh, we're gonna pay you this, it should come then, and then you do all the work, but you plan in, oh, look, I'm making $1,500 on this job, ooh, and you done already spent, something, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, we went in another direction, my apologies, and it's like, oh, fuck, like, so I think living in New York also just makes you a lot more frugal and a lot more like contained with your, with your finances.
Yeah.
Not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people that are just out here, just, you feel me, living like Jay-Z, and I'm like, I ain't there yet, bruh. I can't do that. Nah.
Yeah. What has been the toughest thing you've had to tackle, and what helped you get through it?
The toughest thing that I would say second guessing myself. For all the reasons that I just described, not being able to see what other people see, not being able to identify as anything other than what is written on paper, not being able to imagine a world where I am equal to that of my partner's life. I know it's possible. It has to be, but I think it's just been hard to remind yourself of that because you're constantly reminded of the other.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. All right. For a fun question, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do?
My family out of debt. I would put a down payment, or I would purchase property in Paris, New York, and London. I would probably turn one into a studio, rent out the other two to steady some income. And then because I want to keep my carbon footprint down, I would probably buy a boat because I would really like to limit the airplane travel. But the first thing first, everybody out of debt. If our last names are the same, you good. Everybody. Just like the flat out, I think everything, let's just wipe that clean. And then property. I'd buy land. I would invest in, let that land build, and put it back into just Blackness. Use that money to just try and endorse and promote and educate young Black minds and telling them that they can do whatever the hell they want to do with whomever they want to do and how, basically. But debt was the first one. If it depending on what the amount is, I probably could only do that, which is enough. I think that's fine.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good stuff. All right. Is there anyone that you would like to thank or express your appreciation for that you haven't had the chance to yet?
My parents, clearly, but also my sisters, my sister Sarai and my sister Star, for their resilience and their strength and vulnerability as Black women, as Black women who may not fit into a mold, as Black women who may not feel heard at times, as Black women who have been in places of power before and feel unaccounted for. I am not lost on the majesty of Black women. And because of the age differences between my siblings and I think having sisters who were that in their own flaws, in their own turmoil, in their own trauma, in their own joy, in their own success, in their own failures, consistently being all that they only knew how to be, which was themselves, showed me as a Black man who was told that women are not any of the things that I just described. I think that was the best thing in the world. And they are, to me, I think my sisters to me are my beacons of hope and promise. I think that if considering the things that have happened in our families and whether it be death or sickness or failure or, the immense traumas that happen to just women on a daily basis that, my sisters may or may not have endured, I think watching them bounce back and continue to push forward and build a structure that has no ceiling, I think is amazing for a young Black man to witness. I think that's amazing. So I thank them with every lasting breath that I ever have till the end of time. And my niece, because she is the hope of my future. And I always say, everything I do for two things. I do it for the Bay, and I do it for my niece. Now, luckily, my niece lives in the Bay. So it's it's a twofer. And so between those three women, she's 11, but she is a strong, young, brown-skinned girl. And because of the examples that I had, she now has. And I watch the way that she grows and the fearlessness that she has and the talent that she possesses and the hope that literally just foils and curls off her head and out into the world is just, it's breathtaking. I never had that much confidence as an 11 year old. And I think that watching her grow up is truly an honor and a blessing. She's going to change the world one day, and I'm just waiting for it. Just waiting for it.
Nice. All right. For our final question. How do you define success?
Success is measured by how much you can do for others before yourself, personally. I feel most successful when I've done something for somebody else, when I've changed, when I put a smile on someone's face. That to me is success. If I can make somebody laugh, if I can make someone feel like themselves, if I can make someone be reminded of who they are, if I can make someone feel loved, I can go home. And that sounds so altruistic, but it's I kind of don't, that's why I do what I do and why I work in film, because I believe that creativity and the power of cinema is something that shouldn't be mishandled. I think humans, we work on visual repetition and movement. That's literally how we survive. Watching somebody do something and being, oh, so I could take this rock and crack open this coconut and drink? Oh, we out here. You feel me? Now it takes that all the way to how we're represented and how we're displayed as multifaceted human beings, whether you be a gay man, a woman, or no matter what. So I think but all of that is for the other. I would be nothing without the friends that have done the same for me. So when you ask what is success, success is the repetition and the reciprocity of kindness, unbiased, unrestrained, and unbound by selfishness. Honestly.
Yeah. That's perfectly said. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's so good.
We connected, we politic, and hopefully we'll do this again in the near future.
Yes, I also have to tell my partner you're wearing a Chelsea uniform, because that's definitely the team right there. So this has been good. This has been good.
Nice. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you a lot.